basically what we do is we work with non-technical entrepreneurs, and we take their idea from a napkin sketch to an actual developed product onto the App Store. And I've been doing that for, I guess I got started in the kind of app gold rush of 2011. I don't know if you guys remember that. And built about 100 products, 100 apps over that time. And learned a lot of what to do, what not to do. So I tried to distill my process into very simple kind of steps for those of you who want to take your idea into the App Store. So a bit about my background. I mentioned I built 100 apps over about a 5-year period. I started out as a developer, realized I was a terrible coder, and it would take me years to actually develop the skills to become even kind of mediocre level. So I pivoted into more of like a design role. I worked with clients that had an app idea, translate that into screens and wireframes, and then manage a team of developers to build it. I kind of really fell in love with the startup projects. So I worked with big companies like Tesla and Kaiser Permanente and Intel, but the startup projects were the most interesting because we were really starting from blank slate, and we were trying to build a viable business from scratch. That was just really cool. So that's what inspired me to start App Factory, which was kind of an app development agency specifically tailored to non-technical startup founders. So specifically building startups. Did about 30 startups with those non-technical co-founders, 28 of which were complete and total failures, and learned a lot through that process. One of my clients recommended that I take the process that I was using and distill it into a book. So instead of me managing the project for the client, I could hand them the book and they could do it themselves in this DIY approach. So that's what inspired me to kind of write the thing and get it out there. I taught entrepreneurship at a summer program at Stanford called Silicon Valley Innovation Academy. So it's like a 10-week program where we took a bunch of international students and built a business over the 10-week period. And my day job now is working with Pete Newell and Steve Blank of Lean Startup fame to see if we can take lean startup tactics and apply them to national security problems within the government. So we're working with the DoD and the intelligence community, CIA, FBI, to see if we can take their problems and solve them more like a startup would and less like the biggest bureaucracy on the planet. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm also a product school alum. I was part of the second class at product school, so a lot of the ideas here might be familiar to you if you've been through product school. It's a great program. My solution for most of the problems I encounter with outsourcing is to hire an expert, and there's lots of different ways you can do that. And it's really about finding the right expert for the problem you're trying to solve. So we'll talk about that, but that's the punchline. And I believe this process can work because the last time I gave this talk at product school, this gentleman here came up to me after the talk. His name's Evan Hollinger. He had this startup idea. He wanted to help the 50 million seniors who are having to give up control their financial assets to their adult children because they're too old to manage their finances. We wanted to build a tool to help those adult children manage their parents' finances. That's what we're doing. And this is us at Finovate in New York City. It's a big fintech startup demo conference. We won Best of Show demoing our product that we ended up teaming up and building together using the techniques in the book. So I think it can work. Granted, as a vanity metric, shouldn't take that as it's now a successful startup, but shows positive feedback there.
What's the name?
It's called Golden. JohnGolden.com. Check it out. And so, back to what this talk is about. We're going to be talking about how to build the thing, which is one of the challenges you'll face growing your business. But honestly, it's one of the easier of the challenges. What I've found is much harder is how to build the right thing and how to distribute the thing. So I'm not going to cover those because they're really hard. I've been spending the last 3 years trying to figure out how to build the right thing, how to validate your idea and make sure you're solving a real pain point for a customer. So there's some tactics around that if you want to talk afterwards, sidebar. But this talk is really just about building the thing and doing it cheaply and quickly as possible. So this probably looks familiar. The kind of cliche in app development or any kind of software project is you can build it cheap. Basically, you can pick 2 of these, but you can't do all 3 at once. So the challenge is like how to find the sweet spot here. And I think I've found the sweet spot for non-technical founders. And it's mostly optimizing for good and fast and sort of cheap. I'll talk about how to make it kind of cheap. But we're not going for the $3 an hour guy in Russia who's going to take 6 months to get you a visible kind of prototype. So an example of someone who optimized this really well, this was someone who read the book. She reached out to me over email. Her name's Claudia Irving, and she had a startup idea called Commit News. What basically what Commit News tries to do is to keep you updated on news stories that you follow. So you might have been really into a news story, and then 6 months later, you're wondering what the hell happened with that thing, and it's impossible to find an update. Commit News will keep their eye on the news item and send you an update 6 months later. And so she needed to build some sort of machine learning database that could scrape all of the news articles, basically almost all of them that are published on the web, and do some kind of analysis where she could tie this news article from July 2017 to this updated article, February 2018. And she was like, well, how should I do this? I don't have a whole lot of budget, but I've got this big vision. And so what she did, I kind of coached her through this process where she went to a website called clarity.fm. And it's a place where you can talk to experts on demand. You can get them on the phone, get them on Skype, talk about whatever you want. You pay them by the minute. So she picked 3 machine learning experts on clarity.fm and set up calls with all of them and pitched this idea to them and said, well, what kind of technical approach should I take to this? Like, what do I need in terms of like a developer, and what kind of database do I need? And so she spent about, I think, $100 on those 3 conversations. And from that, she was able to come up with like a technical project plan that then she hired a data scientist on a website called TalkTal.com, which has pre-vetted developers. And she worked with TalkTal for about 2 weeks and had this giant database. I can show it to you after the talk, that scrapes every news article in the world and associates it with each other. So she spent, all in all, I think $600. And the cool thing was she was able to go back to those clarity.fm experts and kind of check the developer she was working with. She was getting quotes from the developer, and the developer, it'll take like 3 months. So she went back to the Clarity FM experts and was like, does that sound right to you? Like, no, that guy's trying to take you for a ride. It should be like a 2-week project. And so she kind of played these experts against each other to her own advantage in a really clever way, and built something that I thought would have taken at least 6 figures to build, and she did it for about $700 in 3 weeks. So there's lots of clever things you can do out there. Claudia's an example. So these are the steps. I think if you do these 7 things well, you basically got like 80% of the efficiency and quality you can get out of outsourcing development, especially as a non-technical person. So The rest of the talk, we're just going to walk through these few steps one by one, talk a little bit about them. Feel free to interrupt me with questions. But this is basically it. So, step one, talk to customers. This really comes out, this is probably the most common point of failure that I experienced building those startups is founders would come to me with this brilliant idea that they really didn't want to talk to anyone about it. They wanted to just build the thing in secret and then do this big reveal and be coronated as a genius entrepreneur. And what we found was that it was just really inefficient. We spend months building the product only to release it and realize no one wanted it. A good example of this, worked with a couple of German fellas who had this idea for an app called For and Me. It's kind of a meetup app where you can say, hey, I'm playing Frisbee at the park, and 4 people could join you to become friends. They were expats living in the Bay Area, finding it hard to connect with other people. And they really did not want to talk to anybody about this idea before they released it. So we spent 3 months building the app. We went to Launchfest, that startup launch festival down in San Francisco, largest startup launch festival in the world. And they set up a booth, and they finally started talking to customers that were coming by the booth. And the customers were telling them, like, wait, who the hell am I going to meet on this thing? Like, wait, is this a dating app? What? For and Me? Is this some kind of weird dating app? No, it's just for friends. It's friends only. So that was the first time they were getting actual feedback from users. And one investor even came by. He's like, "Oh, you're doing a micro meetups app," and that word micro meetups. Oh yeah, that's what we're doing. And it's just such a shame because they could have gotten that feedback 6 months earlier without spending lots of money developing this product. So they took this approach. It didn't work. So if you want to figure out how to talk to customers, this was really uncomfortable for me at the beginning. I think, especially for a lot of people in Silicon Valley, we've got brilliant ideas, but we're a bit on the introverted side. I know that I fit the bill there. But if you can get really good at that, it becomes a superpower, really. And you can find those pain points that are really driving people nuts and build your world product around that pain and have way more success. People really try to buy it directly from you. So here's some tools you can check out if you want more resources on this. Business model canvas that Alex Osterwell put together. It's a great way of clarifying your thinking. Book, Talking to Humans. It's a 30-minute read about how to do these user interviews. And then there's a course on Udacity that Steve Blank posts. That's really good. It's just the fastest, cheapest thing you can do to validate your idea early on. And the lessons you'll learn will help make them much better at it. Step 2, writing user stories. How many are you familiar with user stories? Yeah. Okay, cool. Basically everybody. Great. So we can kind of skip through this part. Yeah. So what a user story looks like. But this to me is the fundamental unit of project management that you're going to need to break down. And based on what you're learning in your interviews, you should be able to kind of pull these out to define your app vision in a user-centric way. Some examples you guys are very familiar. I usually put them in a spreadsheet and then maybe put them in Trello. And I manage the project around the user story. So once you have your user stories, the next step is to turn those into UI sketches. And I usually do this in an app called Sketch. If you've heard of Sketch, it's Mac-based. That's because I've just had a lot of experience with design tools, so that's one I'm comfortable with. If you're new to kind of designing, pen and paper is great. There's also wireframe stencils that you can buy. They're actual paper stencils. So you're drawing almost on an iPhone like screen, which is a great way to do it. There's also a wireframing tool out there for non-technical folks called Balsamic. It's like a drag and drop interface, really easy to use.
Balsamic, like the vinegar?
Yeah, only with a Q. So that's a great one. It's pretty cheap too. And if you're wondering, like, hey, I've never designed an app before, where do I start? What I recommend to people is just take an app, your favorite app, or an app that kind of does what you're trying to do, and steal the interface. We're not trying really. You don't want to create a brand new interface that no one's ever seen before. Familiarity is the goal at this stage. When you're building a product for the first time, you want a familiar UI that users are going to understand. So don't be afraid to bake, borrow, and steal from some of the best out there that have spent millions perfecting every pixel of their design. You can use that to your advantage. So once you've sketched it out, I forgot, there's an optional step in here before we get to this follow step. You can also hire a graphic designer if you really need to plus up those designs. And I've got a chapter in the book that talks about how to hire a graphic designer. But this is optional, and it really comes down to, does your product's value proposition depend on a very clean, aesthetically pleasing design? Often it doesn't, especially in the early stages. Your earliest users are going to be the most forgiving of your product. If they're using your product when it first starts out, that means you're solving a pretty terrible pain point for them. And so they're usually kind of forgiving about the aesthetic quality of the design. But unless maybe your product really depends on that aesthetic design, in which case you will need to hire a graphic designer to build them out. But you've already done most of the work for the graphic designer by creating the sketches. So essentially you've created a canvas, and you just need to hire a painter to go in there, get the colors right, get the layout right. So that's usually $400 to $4,000, depending on how much you want to spend on option step. But once you have those graphic designs or those sketches, I usually compile them together in a product spec document, which is essentially breaks down into these different sections. I usually build it in like Google Sheets. It's just like kind of like a slide deck all the way to it. I'll show you what one looks like here. But I usually put the elevator pitch for the product at the very start, just to understand like what it is the business is trying to do. Explain why you're building the MVP that you're building. What are you hoping to learn after you've released this product? Specify which platforms you're trying to use here. Is it supposed to work on iOS, or is it a web-based app? Is it supposed to work on a desktop computer or mobile specific? Any user notifications that go in there, and then really just give each screen its own slide and explain what's going on that screen to the developer. So this is kind of the holy grail of your product, and this is the guide that the developer is going to use to feel like they really understand what it is you're trying to build, and that what they deliver is going to match your expectations. So they love this because they really often do not get anything like this from a non-technical founder. So when you show up and you've got this product spec, they're looking at you like, this is a person I want to work with because I'm confident that I can be successful on this project. I usually like to hide an Easter egg in the product spec just to make sure they read the thing when you go into an interview. So that could be, whatever they want. It could be like a fun animal fact on slide 32 or something. But you can kind of quiz them on it. It's kind of like a cute way of testing if they actually read the thing. So this is what the rest of the spec looks like. You've got your screen over here, and then kind of a description of what's going on that screen, what the buttons do, what they lead to. You can even kind of hyperlink. So the home screen jumps to slides on the other home screen. So more screens with explainers on the left. This was an app for a Nigerian, it's kind of a two-sided marketplace in Nigeria for makeup artists and people who need makeup for weddings or special events. So you could find a makeup artist nearby and hire them through the app and payments and all that. So step 5, once you've got your product spec, you've got your user stories, you've got your UI sketches, now you're ready to hire a freelancer. And I tried, a lot of different approaches. When I started, I was a total outsourcing skeptic. I didn't believe it could be done. I worked only with people I could see here in the office. And then I started working with people distributed remotely within the state of California. And I was like, wow, this is way better. I saw just a much higher quality of work and actually better communication than I'm seeing with people in the office. So that kind of opened my eyes to potential here. So then when I started App Factory, I hired remote developers on Craigslist that were still local. But it wasn't, the problem for me was I wasn't quite technical enough to vet these developers, to really put them through this rigorous technical interview that you need to do in order to make sure they know what they're doing. That was just, at first I didn't have the time, even if I was extremely technical, to do that. So this was a big problem at the beginning. I came up with a solution that works for me. I'm curious if you guys have solutions that work for you too. But we'll talk about that. So the key for me was realizing that you have to hire someone extremely experienced. As a non-technical founder, you don't want to mess around with some kind of newbie developer. Even though they may appear to be more affordable, they will have a much cheaper hourly rate. Maybe their hourly rate is 3 times less than what an experienced person would ask for. They're going to take 10x more time to build the thing. And so I realized I wasn't saving money by trying to hire inexpensive developers. And when I paid more money for a PhD level person, they just completed the project in astonishingly fast. and the quality of the code was such that I wasn't just banging my head against the wall doing constant bug testing. It just made my entire life easier, and I was saving money, ironically. The other thing I look for is freelancers who have built apps that are similar to what you're building. So maybe they've already got most of the code written, and they can just kind of refactor it, repurpose it, and so you're not starting from scratch. The third thing I realized was that the experience of the developer is way more important than their geography. That really surprised me. And so now most of the developers I work with are in Croatia and Brazil. I've just found their communication style really gels with my communication style. And that's kind of what you're looking for when you're looking for different geographies. Yeah.
Is there a way you account for intrinsic factors? For example, a freelancer may not be as passionate about the value proposition offered by the app. So it's likely that if you're not inspired by what you're producing, you could easily be just doing it for experience, or some external motivators that aren't directly related to the app you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you're interviewing them to see if they're the right fit, that's part of what you're assessing is, do they understand just one, do they get where I'm trying to go with this thing? And 2, are they excited by it? That's a very important part. For sure. Yeah.
So you do that through the interview?
Through the interview, yeah. And also, just putting the product spec out there, you're putting the elevator pitch in your product spec. Maybe you have a website or something. That's going to be its own filter for who replies to that job posting. So just to kind of do some rough numbers, if you're constraining yourself to the Bay Area, you've got about 8.6 million people in the entire globe. Even if you took 10% of this, that's still 100x bigger sample size to work with. So you can do a lot with that kind of scale. Like for instance, the developers I hired in Croatia. Croatia has a youth unemployment problem. They did about 5 years ago. And so a lot of smart young people, instead of going into the job market, went into academia and got extremely educated and got advanced degrees in computer science and engineering, and are looking for work. So they turn to a lot of online platforms to make money, because they can make way more online contracting for a group in America than they can trying to work locally. And cost of living difference is insane. Like, a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco is about $3,000 a month. In Zagreb, Croatia, it's $300 a month. So you're dealing with just incredible cost of living differences. And the counterintuitive thing I found is that actually the hourly rate of the developers doesn't really correlate that closely with experience. It really correlates with geography more than anything else. And that's kind of surprising. So there's different platforms out there where you can find freelancers. I've tried to kind of divide them out on the good, cheap, fast chart here. There's the freelancer route is really you're working one-on-one with a developer, right? And to me, that's a lot better than the agency route, where you're basically telling your vision to an agency. They're developing this in a black box and hiding the developers from you, and then delivering this final product at the end of it. And so I think for non-technical founders, you need to be closely involved with the developer every step of the way. Services like Gigster and Crew, they're kind of a hybrid. They're kind of part agency, part direct relationship with a freelancer. So you're going to get those higher prices, and you're not going to get that one-on-one relationship with the developer. That's been my experience. TopTal, this is where I run my business now. They vet all the developers. You get that one-on-one relationship. You can turn it on, you can turn it off whenever you want. So TopTal for me has been the sweet spot. Upwork, it's great if you have the ability to vet the developers. So I've seen technical people. A guy was an MIT computer scientist. He found these $9 an hour guys in Russia who were incredible. But he was only able to do that because he had the technical expertise to be able to find that, sift through the hundreds and hundreds of fraudsters, fakes on Upwork to find the real.
So that's what's the real cost, right?
That's the problem.
Not
yeah.
just $9 an hour, but for hours to sift through, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, how many have had kind of outsourcing horror stories on some of these platforms? Okay, that's good. Okay, good. That's great to hear, because they're extremely common, unfortunately. Guru and Freelancer, I think they're kind of in the same vein as Upwork. I haven't worked with them recently, so I can't really say.
Are they together now, like this Odesk and Freelancer combined?
Oh, yeah, did they merge?
That's what happened, yeah, they merged.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so so TopTal is my go-to now. They do all the vetting for you, and that's really the pain point that they solve for me. So they carve through thousands of developers, pull out the top 3%. They check them for ability to speak English, also kind of personality. Are they easy to work with projects? And are they, conscientious and industrious and communicative? and then finally this extremely rigorous, about 3-week technical interview. And they're kind of unique because they also have a value proposition to the developers, where TopTal vets the projects that get submitted on TopTal. So you can't just take anyone with some napkin sketch and hire a TopTal developer. They're very careful about who they let their developers interact with. So that's why they're able to create this. So when you're actually hired as a developer and you're managing the project, I think it really just comes down to talking with them once a day. Daily stand-up. How many of you have done daily stand-up meetings? Okay, yeah, great. So really 3 simple questions that you're asking them. And this, to me, is really your job in the project as a non-technical founder, is to remove those blockers. It might be, hey, I'm trying to set up payments right now, but I need you to create a Stripe account so we can create that payment gateway. There's all these little blockers that come up. And the cool thing about, at least when you're working with folks in different continents at a different latitude or longitude, is that time zone can really sync up, where when you're waking up, they're ending the workday, and you just get this 24-hour cycle where they're telling you their blockers so that you can work on them during the day, and then when you go to bed, they're waking up and starting work free of those blockers, and you can get this really nice terminal cycle. So just do your daily stand-ups. Put the user stories in Trello just to keep track of things. Schedule a demo 2 times a week. So that's where we're doing daily stand-up. Should be 5 minutes, but you want to put demos in there. So maybe it's a 20-minute meeting where the developer has a screen share and they're showing you the actual app working and proving to you that they're doing the work. Cool. 7th final step here. Yeah, sure. So the 7th step is really about communication, and it really comes down to, it really becomes relevant when you're doing bug testing. So towards the end of the project, your role is to be the kind of quality assurance engineer for the developer, testing out the app, finding bugs, and reporting them as descriptively as you possibly can. For me, that comes down to screenshots and video, showing them how to recreate the issue so that they can go in there and fix things. And so I do these video screencasts all the time. I'll record myself, post it to a private YouTube, send them the link so that it works completely asynchronously. They can rewatch the video if they had trouble following this sort of stuff. So just get creative and don't limit yourself to email and text, but get multimedia so it's faster, easier, and much more informative to them. So that's really it. I think that, am I missing a step here? I gotta sketch it out. It's missing one. But yeah, these 7 steps, I think there's a whole lot more you could do to really optimize. And I think this gets you to about 80% as a non-technical founder. And I try to distill it down as much as possible.